Well, hello there, friends. Mr. E here, and today we are talking all about this lovely weapon right here. The veteran's very own power sword. That's a very uncomfortable wrist position, looks like. But this weapon is one of the best weapons in the melee slot on the veteran class. It's a veteran exclusive, of course, and it does require a little bit of nuance and knowledge to understand, though. And I wish I saw more people with it because it's really, really powerful when it's in the right hands. So I'm going to focus in on it today. I'm going to tell you everything there really is to know about it, give you the crash course on this weapon, and hopefully you feel comfortable running it in your games. And this is going to be the start of a week full of veteran-based content where I'm going to be talking about all of the best weapons in the class and giving you the breakdowns of how to play and how to be an effective and a solid veteran for your team, because it's a really, really good class. And yeah, I think that's all there really is to it. Let's go ahead and get started here. Let's first and foremost talk about the simple stuff, such as how should you set this weapon up, how should you build it, and how should you build around it if you want to have this in your loadout. The first thing we have to say here is that there is no option between the two marks for this weapon. You must select the Mark 6. The reason being, we will talk about moves a little bit later on, but there is a move that the Mark 6 has access to that the Mark 3 does not, and that move defines the entire weapon. That is why it is powerful as it is. It is a god tier OP move, and so you want to have access to that. Choose the Mark 6, no option. Then from there, as far as stats, minimize mobility, maximize everything else because this is a damage-based weapon. And then we will go to the perks. For my money, one of these perks should be that Carapace armored enemy effectiveness, because crushers are such a challenge for many enemies or for many weapons in this game, and the power sword has a very easy time of doing it. It just takes a couple of additional buffs, like, you know, a damage buff from killing another enemy to be able to do this to a crusher, right? To be able to chunk them and completely overkill them. You can one-shot one rotation crusher with just 2 moves if you have focus target. There's tons and tons of ways you can chop these guys up. Even on Havoc, this weapon just one-shots nearly everything, and the only enemies that stand up against it are those big boys. So we spec against Carapace so we can knock them down. Flak armor is another good option here. It makes it so that you can make some breakpoints for light attack, just sweeping the heads off of things like shotgunners and heavy, not heavy gunners, but just the auto gunners, the elite gunners. But you can also spec into something like Crit Chance. This would work very well if you were taking this talent here, Exploit Weakness, which will give you 20% to all of your damage for 6 seconds if you hit a melee crit. And so 5% more Crit Chance is going to boost your overall damage if you're able to trigger that more often, which is very solid. So those are your options there. And then for blessings, you really only have 3 options. And unfortunately, those 3 options can only occupy one of the 2 slots, because there is a mandatory blessing on this weapon called Power Cycler. You see it right there. So Power Cycler gives 2 extra chained energized hits. And the problem is that the default for extra energized hits is just 1. So here's a sword without it. You can see I can get 1 attack. Woohoo! And that's not enough to do what we need with this weapon. So we have to take Power Cycler as one of the 2 blessings, but the other one is up to you. And I think for my money, there's only 3 options. I'll present the sort of a sales pitch for each of them, and I'll let you decide which one's going to fit for your playstyle the best. The first of these is Brutal Momentum. Brutal Momentum gives you 15% weak spot damage, which is pretty dang solid. Like, headshots are very, very good with this weapon. And if you get a weak spot kill, which is pretty easy to do here, it ignores enemy hit mass. And this is going to really contribute to your ability to clear hordes quickly. You will very easily be able to clear most hordes, but for very thick hordes like Mobian 21st or something like that, it can actually help to have a weapon that does not get slowed down by hit mass at all. Even though this weapon has a lot of cleave on its energized mode, it doesn't have an infinite cleave, and it will lose effectiveness if you can't swing through all those guys that have a lot of hit mass. So Brutal Momentum is really good for not only doing single target, but also hordes. Then we have an option of Rampage up here. Rampage, if you hit at least 3 enemies with an attack, it increases your damage by 36% for 3.5 seconds. So immediately from hitting 3 enemies, which is pretty easy to do with these sweeping light attacks on this weapon, you will jump up 36% in damage, which is a lot. And that means that anything you do, whether it be single targets or whatever for the next 3.6 seconds, those are going to be boosted, and that can allow you to kind of swap back and forth between clearing a horde and hitting an enemy in the head. However, it requires a small group of enemies being together to get it started. So if you don't think you're going to be in a situation where there's always hordes around to start this blessing on, maybe try the last one here, which is Slaughterer. Slaughterer gives 8% strength for 4.5 seconds on kill, stacking 3 times. So when this gets fully stacked up, then you are stacking 5 times. Did I say that right? Stacking 5 times. So when that gets fully stacked up, that's 40% strength, which is damage and impact, meaning stagger. And that, I think this one, honestly, is probably the most well-rounded because it enables you to swap between fighting in melee with a horde, and then a crusher walks up and you immediately turn on him, and you have just been fighting a horde, so you've got your slaughterer stacked to 40% extra, and you turn on him and you blast him with the combo, and he drops immediately because you're hitting him with 40% extra strength in there, which is really, really good. So that enables you to fight better. However, if you're using this weapon just in a pinch, right, you're just pulling it out once in a while to get some horde off of you, or just deal with a mutant or something, maybe Brutal Momentum would be better in that situation, because this is just a nice little, doesn't require you to stack up anything. But I don't know, there's definitely an argument to be made between all 3 of these. However, the other one has to be Power Cycler. So now that we talked about how to set this blade up and get the right blessings and talents and whatever on it, let's talk about how to set your build up to make the best use of the Power Sword. So the Power Sword is a really, really strong horde clear, but also a devious single target killer, as we'll showcase when we talk about the moves in a second. But it really likes certain talents that can boost it over that edge and take it to the next level. One of those talents that's really, really good with this weapon is, of course, Precision Strikes over here. You're probably taking this on every veteran build anyway, but extra headshot damage, of course, benefits this blade insanely well because it's a very, very easy weapon to headshot with. But when you have this blade, I would also recommend Focus Target. Focus Target is a great keystone for this blade because it pushes us with enough damage that we can take these guys and do some really serious damage to them. We can take them out in no time with those extra added damage buffs from Focus Target. That isn't all, though. This blade is also really, really good into configurations that have Weapon Specialist over here. When Weapon Specialist is active, if you've killed an enemy with your ranged weapon in the last, however long, right? You just have to kill the ranged enemy, or kill an enemy with ranged at some point. Well, then for the next 10 seconds after you draw this blade, you'll get an extra 15% attack speed. And attack speed with this weapon affects not only the speed that those attacks come out, as I'm certain you noticed there, but also the speed of the animation to charge the blade. So you're cutting all that down by 15% on top of potentially taking this 10% attack speed node up here, and that's going to mean that you're churning out 25% more DPS overall. You're activating, you're going through those 3 cycled attacks, you're reactivating, going through those attacks, and it makes it much tighter and much cleaner to play with because that activation period is even smaller. So yeah, those are some really, really solid ways to play around the weapon. This weapon also plays very well with, of course, Skirmisher, because it improves their overall base damage, and you're probably going to be doing a lot of sprinting and sliding to get in close for melee. Agile engagement is disgusting here as well, because this weapon is great at nabbing last hits and kills with melee, and therefore you're going to have 25% direct damage on melee or on range when you swap, and go back and forth. Fits perfectly with the Weapon Specialist playstyle. So yeah, those are sort of the best recommendations here. Crit, of course, Reciprocity is really, really good here. Is with Exploit Weakness, it's going to boost it overall, but the weapon isn't exactly like the biggest crit powerhouse in the world. It does, however, still, if you look at the stats here, it does, however, still get some pretty solid crit ratios. Like, we're talking 2x on flak critical weak spot hits, like 80%, 70 or so percent when we're just getting regular critical or regular weak spot hits. So it's nice to get a crit every once in a while. It's very, very solid for this weapon. But that is that's pretty much all I can recommend as far as building the weapon. Now it's time to talk about how to actually use the darn thing, and this is where stuff gets interesting. Of course, this weapon does require to be charged before you actually use it, right? You have a 1-second window from the time you activate this weapon till when you can actually swing it. So you need to be kind of sort of constructing your game plan around that. From the time you press this button till when you can actually swing the attack, that's 1 second. There's really no way you can cheat it. However, of course, attack speed improvements do make this window shorter, which is why we like attack speed so much. Now, this 1 second window, after that's expired, you have a timer. you have a 3-second timer before the blade turns off on its own. But there's a couple other ways you can actually make the blade turn off as well. And keeping the blade on as much as possible is our goal here. The more the blade is on, the more empowered attacks we're launching, the better this blade is going to feel and the better we're going to do in terms of damage. So after this blade is active, you have a 3-second window here to do your thing, or else it's going to turn off, right? If you, at any point during those 3 seconds, use all of your attacks. We have 3 attacks. 1, 2, 3. Right, there you go. The blade is off. 1, it can be on different targets. 3, there you go. Blade's off. It can be heavy attacks. 1, 2, 3. Blade's off. It can be push down, whatever it is, right? That's going to turn the blade off. And then there's one more, I guess, 1.5 more ways that the blade can get turned off, and this is usually what messes up players with this weapon. They're counting in their head. They're going 1, 2, 3, counting their charges, and that's kind of what you'll want to do when you're playing with this thing, is keep track of how many charge attacks you have left before you need to re-up and get yourself a new round of 3 charges. But you can also inadvertently, or by not your own will, get your charge canceled as well. So watch this. I'm going to activate this weapon and get hit. You see how it's still active here? That's good, right? But if I activate this weapon and make a hit and then I get hit, it turns off the weapon immediately. So yeah, you need to be careful when you're on the offensive that you don't take damage between your charge attacks, because it'll cancel the charge on your weapon and you'll have to recharge, and that can be devastating towards losing a horde fight, because you're getting surrounded by a horde. You get hit when you spent that second activating, and now you're gonna have to reactivate to start again. Yeah, so dodging in that 1 second, getting set up and putting yourself in a position where you can launch all 3 of the charge attacks back to back is generally the best way to play around this weapon. And then also inadvertently, sometimes players will cancel their own charge. Now, once I've activated this blade, I can do whatever I want, right? I get 3 seconds, I can swing at the air, I can block, I can do all sorts of nonsense, right? I can look at the blade, that's all cool. However, if you land even a single attack and then you block, it immediately turns off. So don't be throwing out the block unless you have some very specific reason why you want to power the blade down. I don't know why you would, right? But blocking after you've landed one attack is a surefire way that a lot of players land themselves in a bad situation. Because what'll happen is you're getting surrounded by a horde, you throw out one attack, and then you block to push some horde off or something, and then you go to attack again, and your blade is depowered. And then nothing dies, and then you have to use another second to power it up, and then it just kind of goes downhill from there. So just make certain we are not throwing out a block until you are fully depowered, and then you can block and shove and reposition to your heart's content. But yeah, the weapon is really all about finding those windows where you can effectively deal huge burst damage, and then just kind of like biding your time for like a second or 2 seconds in between that, so you can reposition, so you can get the blade charged back up and then go back in, which is it's a very fun and very different sort of way to play. Now, of course, we need to talk about how to actually use the blade and use its weapon, like sort of moves. And there's really not too much intricacy here. There is only one move to really speak about, but I'll go ahead and show all of the sort of moves you can use with this weapon. Of course, you've got your regular sort of your light attacks, which are very nice sweeping attacks like this, right? Nice 3 strikes, and this is how you're going to clear most enemies in the game. Just 3 light attack charge hits. These are very damaging. They do plenty of damage. You could also, of course, use heavies. But remember, you have that 3-second timer, and 3 heavies, if there's any gap in between them as well, is going to put you very close to running out of that timer and potentially missing one of the heavies in your chain. And yeah, that's really all the intricacy there is to the weapon swings here. That there's nothing crazy going on with the actual weapon attacks, excepting one attack on this weapon. Now it's time to learn about the ultimate move of this blade, which is called the push stab, more specifically the push stab combo. So what is a push stab? If you're uninitiated, a push stab is when you block with a weapon and then you push by attacking while you're holding block, but then you continue to hold attack while you're still in that animation. So you'll stab. And that's the push stab, right? There you go. And so for some weapons, it's not actually a stab, but for this weapon, it actually is. And it stabs them right in the eyeball. And this is the reason we're using the specific weapon, the Mark 6 instead of the Mark 3, because of this push stab attack, because it's so good. Now, it doesn't look that good. That's because the blade's not empowered. That's pretty good. That's about 2,600 damage. and that's not what even the crits or any other buffs up. So this attack is disgusting, and it pokes enemies' brains out of their head. And that is only part of it, because there's actually a couple of other attacks we can do in the chain here, and this is called the push stab combo. So after we do the push stab, we can follow up with a light attack over the head, like that. And then we can actually, we can charge it, we can push stab, light attack, and then follow up with a heavy attack for even more, and ending up over 5,000 damage. And if you do this all right, with the right timings, you can drop these crushers faster than they can even get a single attack off on you. So let's go over the steps to do this. I'm going to tutorialize you step by step. I'm going to give you the instructions, and you can pause the video. You can slow it down to like 1/4 time scale. I'm going to sound weird, but it'll hopefully be helpful. So what you need to first do is activate the weapon. Okay, it's only going to stay activated for 3 seconds. Let's pretend it's activated here. Then you'll hold block. Then you will hold attack, and it will do the push stab. As that push stab is coming out and hitting the enemy, right, when it hits the enemy, or at some point before the arm makes its way back off your frame towards your body, let go of both of the mouse buttons, let go of both attack and block. You should be pressing neither attack nor block at that point. Then you will deliver a single light attack. So you'll just, one more attack. There you go, from there. And then after that, if you're feeling fancy and the target's still not dead, you can hold a heavy and go in for that attack right there. And that would be your most effective single target combo you could possibly do. So let's look at that in as slow as I can possibly do it with the timings available in game. Because if you don't hit it, if you're too eager on it, right? If you're doing the push stab and you're too eager on it, you'll mess up the follow-up combo here. You'll do this attack. That's not good. Or if you're still holding block, you'll go back into this animation. That's not good, right? So we need to be spacing these out just enough, but urgency is also key, because if you delay too long, you're going to miss the window for the combo as well. So here is the slowest possible way you can do it, which is charge the weapon, push stab, follow-up attack, heavy attack. There you go. That's how slow you can do it. And now, once you get this muscle memory down, you start to go faster and faster. And of course, if you have more attack speed in your build, right? If you have let's go ahead and get some extra 15% juice here. So this is how fast you can do it when you have all that together. Like that fast. And that can probably go even faster, honestly. That felt wimpy. But yeah, you can actually cut that animation off halfway. You see there that, like, normally I'm not even waiting for the blade to go and charge up. I'm cutting it off at the pass and starting straight into that push stab. And then we're coming out with that attack. Boom, 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 we're done, right? And that is the power of this blade. That is what you need to be working on and getting your muscle memory down for, because that single combo makes this thing so disgusting, because it has an insane horde clear, right? No problem with hordes, and, you know, weapons really in this game only lack against killing these heavy single targets, but this weapon is a goat of doing that. You just need to know this one combo, and you're gonna two-piece these guys like no problem. Plus, this thing is disgusting against pretty much everything else, like bulwarks. The second they open themselves up, they're dead. If it was a Reaper, they're dead. If it was a mutant or something, or a Poxhound, right? The Poxhounds just die, but yeah, all sorts of enemies take massive, massive damage from this thing. You know, back shots on this boy, face shots on this boy, whatever it is. Yeah, these attacks are incredibly, incredibly devastating. So make use of them and get out there and practice with the weapon. I love the weapon. It's super cool. I don't think this blade, this skin is in the store anymore right now, but it's the best skin you can get. There's some skin out there if you want to get it right now, but yeah, you gotta wait for this one to come around. This one's super, super cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully it helped you. Namaste, and see you next time. Bye-bye.